Hello again, college football fans, coming at you with your Week 10 SEC Power Rankings. Can't believe we're already to Week 10, but we are. And here we go. Vanderbilt, number 14. They won the second iteration of the Bottom of the Barrel Bowl, and I think they have secured their spot as the worst team in the Southeastern Conference 2021. And that's the way we like things in the SEC. Just ask around. Now, number 13, South Carolina. I dropped South Carolina because, Missouri got their win this week. They both have similar schedules, but they will definitely have their chance to see who can break this little tiebreaker and see who's the second to the worst team in the SEC, and that will be coming up soon. Not next week, though. Number 12, obviously, I flip-flop Mizzou up again. 12, 13, 14 have been rock solid so far this season. Number 11, I got Florida. The biggest disappointment, certainly in the SEC going into this season, and I'm making a big case for biggest disappointment in the nation down there in Gainesville. Spoke about it in the last video. Don't really know what's happening with Dan Mullen in that program, but if it's not changed very dramatically, very quickly, we'll be seeing a new era a lot quicker than anybody would have ever imagined outside of a Dan Mullen NFL trip, Nobody ever thought that he would just be getting flat out fired after a few seasons, but one more season like this, and that is definitely what will happen to Dan Mullen in Gainesville. Number 10, I have LSU. 14, 13, 12, 11, that's pretty much the stinky, just bad. You can't really say too many good things about those programs. I thought LSU would be among that group, and I could have easily just said lump them in there, but LSU has not been quite as stinky as they are perceived to be by many, and certainly by me at the beginning of the season. When you look at that resume, they got 2 conference wins, which is more than you can say for Arkansas at this point, although Arkansas hasn't played as many games in the conference as LSU has, but still, that's worth mentioning. Their only non-conference losses against UCLA, who is not, a terrible team. So LSU has beaten all the teams that it was supposed to beat, those little tacky non-conference games that they played and everything, and then managed to beat a very good Mississippi State team and a fledgling awful Florida program, but still an SEC win nonetheless. So LSU, things are going bad. Obviously they have the lame gorilla coach right now, but LSU is not as terrible as a lot of people will tell you. Now, will they make it to a bowl game? That remains to be seen, and they might go ahead and collapse and fall down into that stinky zone. But right now, they got a little bit of BO on them, but they're not just terrible. They don't smell like a sewer right now, like Vandy or South Carolina or somebody, or Florida, for that matter. And also, they have the win over Florida, so obviously I can't put them in that lower fourth. But LSU's in flux right now. They're in limbo, like I said last week, and they're as far as the 2021 season goes, I don't think that fan base cares much about it, and I don't think the rest of the country does either. What is interesting about LSU right now is their coaching search, and I have no thoughts as to who will wind up being at the helm down there in Red Stick, but whoever it is going to have a lot of expectations, and depending on who it is, following Ed Orgeron is going to be a tough act down there because he is beloved among the corn dogs. So outside of Jimbo Fisher, somebody's going to have a hard time winning over that fan base. But we all know how to win fan bases in the SEC, and that's win ball games, baby. Just win. Like Al Davis said all those years ago. Tennessee I got at number 9, and they still are playing way above expectations, my expectations anyway. 9 seems a little bit low for them right now, but that's because there's a lot of other teams that are just, they just have more impressive resumes, just slightly, for whatever reason. If you will notice, there's a theme that's kind of forming in my power rankings right now. Of the bottom, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the bottom 6, 4 of those teams. No. Let's see here. That's right. Of the bottom 6, 5 of these teams, I had to count and I had to make sure that I wasn't mistaken because it seems wrong, but it's right. 5 of the bottom 6 teams are SEC East teams. So, you know, that's gonna add to a narrative that I'm working on for the conference, going ahead. But we'll talk about that as I move on. Number 8, I got Arkansas, who has been holding strong in this number 8 spot. This is the third straight week, I believe, for Arkansas at number 8. I had them ahead of Tennessee. I had them ahead of LSU and Florida, who all have more conference victories with 2 than Arkansas. But Arkansas's 1 conference victory is a very good one against Texas A&M, and their 3 losses are against Auburn, Ole Miss, and Georgia. So you can't penalize them too much. Great losses, a good win. And they also have a couple of pretty impressive non-conference victories as well, or one impressive non-conference victory, which precludes them from being any lower than 8. Or prevents them from being any lower than 8. Number 7, I've got Mississippi State, who put in another very impressive victory. They have 3 SEC wins now under their belt, kind of out of nowhere. They did lose to LSU, which keeps them a little bit lower on this list than some of the other teams. Their other loss, obviously, was a blowout, huge blowout. It was to Alabama, but it was a big, nasty loss. So that keeps them from moving up a little bit higher. But their 3 wins, are nothing to sneeze at. Texas A&M, Kentucky, both. Kentucky won't be a top 15 team after this week, probably, but right now, I think they're both top 15 teams, and that's very impressive for a Mississippi State squad. I mean, you can't ask for too much more in Stark Vegas. And, I mean, look, they're They're a bad ref call against Memphis and a kid jumping over a blocker on a punt away from, in the LSU game, from being, a one-loss team, and their one loss being to Alabama. So Mississippi State is definitely a team to keep your eye on this year. They have some interesting games coming up, and we'll obviously talk more about them as we move forward. Number 6, I have Kentucky. That's a big drop. I think they moved from 3 to 6. No, they moved from 4 to 6. But, I had to do it. That was a pretty unimpressive-looking team that they had on the field in Starkville, and losing to 14 against Mississippi State just is not a good look in the SEC, no matter how good they are. And, like I said, Kentucky is becoming more of what we thought they were. Ole Miss, I have at number 5, and that was a very surprising loss in Jordan-Hare. But, you got to do it. Got to drop Ole Miss down to number 5. Now, as far as the rest of their season goes, they've got, obviously, they've got a big game against Texas A&M. They've got their Egg Bowl coming up. So Ole Miss has got a little bit of work left to do if they want to be one of the upper echelon teams. Certainly if they want to go to a Power 5 bowl. And I'm not so sold on them right now because their offense that just looked invincible for so long definitely had some of that armor chinked against Auburn last Saturday, and I think that they're in danger of putting up a very typical looking Ole Miss schedule if they don't have a strong close here. And they've got an interesting game coming up against their old coach this week, which we'll talk about in the predictions video. Number 4, I have Texas A&M. They were off like so many others this week, but this is setting up number 4, Texas A&M, number 3, Auburn, coming off of that huge win over Ole Miss, are playing next week. And this is one of those games that I feel like is sort of a tie, or Texas A&M and Auburn are kind of tied when you look at their very similar resumes. Texas A&M has an extra SEC loss, which hurts them a lot. But like I said in the review video, I believe these teams still have a chance to go to the college football playoff, because if they do, the winner of this team, especially Auburn, because they still control their own destiny, but a winner of this team, if it's A&M, they would have to rely on Auburn beating Alabama. But if the winner of this team can go on to beat Georgia in an SEC championship game, then that means that they're a two-loss team, yes, but they are also a two-loss team with victories over number 1 Alabama at the time they played them for Texas A&M, and then number 1 Georgia. And Auburn, if they beat Alabama, it'll be a 2 or 3 Alabama team, and then they will have to avenge the loss that they got for Auburn. So, if Texas A&M can pull it off and get a little help, and if Auburn can win out in the rest of their games, then I think they're definitely in a conversation that will be had by that committee going into the college football playoff. And to round it out, obviously, I've got Alabama at number 2, who was off, and number 1 Georgia, who, like I said earlier, the win over Florida wasn't all that impressive, especially when you see how Florida played and what's going on with that program. But watching Auburn play the way they did against Ole Miss suddenly makes that win that Georgia had against them, 34-10, I believe it was, look very, very impressive, because Auburn is going to be flirting with the top 10, going forward, and certainly if they beat Texas A&M, they're going to be a top 10, maybe even a top 5 school after that. So the Georgia at least has a nice looking marquee victory on their resume, and that goes into what I was talking about earlier when I was counting up the number of SEC East schools that are at the bottom of the barrel here. The SEC East, we were really hoping the last couple of years with Mullen and Florida playing the way they had played, and Kirby, we all knew that Kirby's got Georgia at the highest of levels, and maybe with Heupel moving Tennessee up a little bit more, and we felt like Missouri had a chance. It just seemed like the SEC East was starting to rise to the level that the SEC West has been for over a decade now, as the best division of any conference in college football. And this year they've just taken a big step back, and that doesn't bode well for Georgia. I really want Georgia to prove it to me that they're as amazing as we want them to be going into an SEC championship game against Alabama. But they just have not had a chance to prove it against anybody except for Auburn. And so moving forward, I'm not going to pick against Georgia anymore. They're going to win the rest of their games. I wouldn't be shocked if they stubbed their toe against Tennessee, but I would be surprised. And so there we have it moving forward. And next week's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to have the preview video and the prediction video for that coming out very soon. And thanks again for watching.